So here for a little bit more analysis of the midterm election results and what it means for each party's future is, I'm not sure, CBS News political analyst and Republican strategist Leslie Sanchez, not sure if we got her, and CBS News political contributor and Democratic strategist Joel Payne. I think it's just me and you, Joel. I don't know what happened to Leslie. Maybe she slept in, or I don't know. Could be technical difficulties. But let's talk about it because there's a lot to talk about from the Democrat side. First off, let me ask you, now that most of the races are called, is there anything at all that has surprised you about the results? Certainly, it seems like Republicans were caught off guard by the lack of the red wave, which I'm sort of sick and tired of saying, but you know.
Yeah, look, I think even a Democrat, the most optimistic Democrat, did not expect the week that we experienced last week, holding the Senate and having the potential to grow Democrats' lead in the Senate, in the House, essentially fighting it to a draw with potentially Republicans taking a slight lead. It looks like there's a path for them to do that now. But this is, much against historical trends, historical headwinds. Really, 2002 and 1998 are the only historical comparisons to what we have just seen last week with the N party not taking major losses in a midterm. I think something that's not coincidental was the fact that in both of those cases, you had major national events that interceded with the body politic. In 1998, you had the Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky scandal and how Republicans reacted to that. And then in 2002, you had the aftermath of 9/11. I think it's a comparable moment when you think about the fact that over the last few years, we've had this massive transformation in American society, going back to George Floyd, going back to COVID, going to Dobbs. You've had a lot of changes to the coalitions. And so I think when we're doing kind of an autopsy of what happened, I think you have to consider those societal bigger picture factors as well. But yeah, look, even the most optimistic Democrat, I think, did not expect the week that we just experienced.
So let me ask you this. I'm going to play a bite from Tom Cotton, I think it is. Senator Tom Cotton, who's a Republican, his take on the midterm performance for Republican candidates. I'm going to play what he had to say.
Obviously, we hoped that we would have won more seats. I think the lessons in our victories can be applied to some places where we came up a little bit short. We need to focus on serious, substantive accomplishments and issues like crime, like our wide open border, like addressing runaway inflation. I think we have lessons in the places we had victories that we can apply to places where we were disappointed.
Okay, so he sort of kind of glossed over a little bit about the performances of certain candidates. I want to ask you, Joel, do you think that this was almost as much, if not more, about the quality of Republican candidates versus the messaging coming from the Democratic Party?
Yeah, and I was on Face the Nation. I was, in a segment after Senator Cotton, and I watched that in amazement to a certain extent because it doesn't seem like he's really absorbing kind of the lesson that the voters dealt to all, folks in public service last week. It seems like those issues of crime and immigration, look, no one is suggesting that those are not important whatsoever, but it would seem to be a bit ignoring kind of the political climate to not think about how Republicans kind of move the needle on abortion. The fact that you had these Republican-appointed Supreme Court justices that changed the public discussion on abortion that obviously fired up not just Democratic voters, but a lot of voters around the country. And yes, those issues of inflation mattered, but I think Democrats on the ballot across the country put some pretty good both actions in the last Congress and some ideas about how to address that going forward. They put those out there. I think Republicans did a lot of blaming. And to your question, there are a lot of bad Republican candidates that were up for consideration. Look, in Pennsylvania, if Republicans had a better candidate, I imagine they would have been more competitive with John Fetterman. I would imagine in Georgia, if they had a better candidate, they might not be going to a runoff with Raphael Warnock. And so on and so forth. So I think Republicans have to do a little bit of soul searching to accept what voters dealt to them last week.
Well, now we have Leslie Sanchez, who can speak a little bit more about the Republican results. Leslie, really good to see you. I have been kind of surprised in the wake of these midterm elections about how outspoken some Republicans are in terms of their criticism of former President Trump. I was just kind of quickly looking at my phone because I saw, a quote from Governor Hogan in Maryland, who's Republican, basically saying, listen, now the former president's responsible for 3 losses, 3 strikes are out. I don't think you would ever hear that kind of commentary, I don't know, even like 8-9 months ago. Do you think that the former president harmed Republicans in this midterm election?
So there's a mixed answer to that, Anne-Marie. Part of the effort let's look at the positives. The former president has a standard bearer role in the party. He's ignited a tremendous number of Republicans to run for office, and not all of them were kind of extremist as they were seen now in some of the Senate races, for example, that Joel was talking about. You had a lot, for example, we just had a new Latina who won a competitive election in Oregon, Lori Chavez de Remer, and she was running on immigration and some of these, the homeless issue, the crime issue. So some of the messages that the former president pushed forward, certainly you heard that be successful. Raising money, he did a lot to amplify that effort. On the negative side, what you're talking about right now, there is a growing undercurrent of Republicans, and including, I would say, from my own resources, MAGA loyalists who are tired of the ego, tired of the effect that Trump has on down ballot elections, and are looking for alternatives. The quotes that were to me is that he needs to play smarter. Yes, they feel the president has been unfairly criticized, but that it's time to him to work with someone like a Ron DeSantis out of Florida as opposed to attacking him. So there's a lot more power in that punch than we saw before Tuesday.
And let me ask you, Leslie, lawmakers are going to be heading back to Washington, heading back to work. We know that the Democrats have the Senate, but it looks like the Republicans will take the House, and they're going to have to talk about leadership. Some Republicans are suggesting delaying the leadership vote. What does this signal about the current state of the party to you? And what challenges does Congressman Kevin McCarthy face in his bid to become the next Speaker of the House?
It's a difficult bid when you have those small minorities or majorities, excuse me. If we had won by 20, 30, 40 seats, it'd be much more commanding, a lot stronger coalition to put together. And those minority voices, for example, the Freedom Caucus, that's what we're all talking about, would be drowned out to some extent. And I don't even want to say it that way. I would say that there's a balance in working together, as opposed to forcing their hand that if their demands are not met, they're going to disrupt our own Republican conference. That's the tone of the debate today. That's the difficulty for the party. So unless they're, I feel that Kevin McCarthy can do a good job doing that, because he started over a year ago trying to, with these task forces, to bring people together, find a consensus around a few big ideas, with a commitment to America. But the friction is there, and the majority being that small, it's going to continue, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Leslie and Joel, thank you so much.
Thank you.